This podcast contains mature content and listener discretion is advised.
Also, be advised, we are not medical professionals and this podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
Running through the streets, solving all the mysteries, crushes and aliens, lots of other crazy things, laughing all the way. All we know is we don't know Kayla and Maggie, breaking down conspiracies, learning all the way, searching through time and space. Kayla and Maggie, now that's done, let's crack a beer and
Welcome to Mystery Team Inc.
And we're in.
We're in.
Welcome to
back
Mystery-
to Mystery Team Inc. I'm Maggie.
And I'm a little bit behind. Oh, I'm really excited.
Me too.
Do you have business?
Just to say, go check out our Patreon.
Oh, yeah. We'll explain it right here. Wow. That sounds fun.
Can't wait to sign up.
I don't have any other business.
I don't either.
Okay, you want to just jump in?
Yeah, we might as well.
Okay, great. I'm so excited.
So I'm going to give the source for this episode after I get into it because
Okay.
the source, maybe I'll give it at the end because I think it may.
At the end of the whole episode?
Yeah, because I think it may just give the whole thing away. But I will just say the main source is an article by Noah Shachtman. And I'll give the title
Should
of the
I
article.
know who that is?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's it's a writer.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what it's about.
I would love that.
I will tell you what it's about.
Okay, I will tell you what it's about.
I'll tell you what it's about. I'll tell you the title. The
Okay.
title, well, not the title of the episode.
Oh my God. It's been, I just want one piece of
Our
information.
story begins.
Professional writer Maggie Spiel.
Professional writer Maggie Spiel, everybody. Yay! Our story begins. We got there. We took the scenic route, but we got there. Peeking, just screaming into the microphone. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Sorry, Andrew.
Sorry, Andrew. I'm fine, by the way. Our story begins in the fall of 1998 in Berlin with two philologists whose job it is to study the history of languages.
Okay, cool job.
Christiane Cipher, our hero, and Wolfgang Hauck. So they were colleagues who, even outside of work, spent most of their time discussing dead languages and ancient books. And on this day, Christiane was getting ready to move to Stockholm because she was offered a position at Uppsala University. And Wolfgang was like, I have a going away present for you. So he hands her a brown paper envelope marked top secret and had some strange symbols drawn on it.
Okay.
Inside was a note that said, something for those long Swedish winter nights. And 100 photocopied pages of wall-to-wall symbols.
Oh.
It was a cipher.
Please do this for me.
Oh, I will.
Yes.
I just have to find one.
Yeah, just go find one really fast.
So this cipher was first rediscovered in 1970 in Germany. They had dated it to the 1740s. It contained 75,000 characters, made up of 90 symbols. It looked like this.
Yes.
And when I say wall-to-wall, I mean there's not spaces,
Yeah.
like where one would think a word would be. So it's made up of runes, astrological symbols, mathematical symbols, and then Roman letters. There are accents on some of the symbols.
Mm-mm.
There were two words on the outside of the manuscript that were not encoded. One at the beginning that said Philip, 1866, and one at the end that says Copiale 3.
That sounds really familiar.
You may remember this story because I did a TikTok about it.
Did you?
I did. But
Okay.
I obviously didn't get to get into it.
Mhm.
So today we're getting into it.
Yay.
So this is the story of the Copiale Cipher.
I'm so glad that I remembered the name.
I knew you would eventually. I knew eventually it would come to you. I'm really glad that the name was what did it for you.
I'm so excited.
So Christiane took her present and she got to work. She was like, okay, Philip on the front is spelled with 2 P's at the end. I just imagined if I didn't say at the end. And
Papillip.
and that is typically the German way to spell Philip. And Copiale is Latin for copy. So she was like, okay, I have a German, possibly German word, and I have a Latin word, and that's all I have. And also, is this the third copy? Because it's Copiale 3. So the first thing that she tried in order to decipher this code was frequency analysis. So basically, she started copying down the symbols by hand and cataloging how often they appeared in the text. But as I mentioned, there are 90 symbols and 75,000 characters. So at some point, she hit a wall and she just set the cipher aside because she was like, I'm not getting anywhere. 13 years later, in 2011, Christiane went to a talk at Uppsala University on computational linguistics given by a USC professor named Kevin Knight. So he is a machine translation specialist, and he uses computers to create algorithms to do translations. For those of you who are too young to remember, in the early 2000s, Google Translate existed, but you had to tell it what language it was reading.
Yeah.
It couldn't just look at text and figure it out, which
And it
now
wasn't
it
good.
can guess. It was not good. It was so bad, in fact, that people would be the predecessor to Google Translate was Babbel, and people would just for fun translate text into Babbel in a different language and then translate it back just to read it the same way that we now read AI script as a joke.
You say people as if it wasn't us.
Well, us included, for sure. But
We
that
used
was
to do it with
but
fan
we weren't
fiction.
the only ones that were doing
No,
it.
we
It was
were
a very
not.
common
It
meme
was
to just
so
try
fun.
to use computational translation just as a joke, just to see how bad it would be when it came back to the original language.
We had some really good ones.
Oh yeah, we did.
Mostly Harry Potter fanfic.
The fan fiction was particularly funny because it's such a particular way of phrasing things, and Harry Potter also has a lot of nonsense words,
Yep.
which in English are usually a combination of 2 real words.
Yeah.
Or a word that is meant to sound like another English
Yeah.
word but doesn't exist in
Or
another language.
fake Latin.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
So by the time it got back to English, it would just be complete nonsense.
It was a masterpiece every time.
So anyway, at the time, this was excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. Let him out.
Please leave that in.
Okay, fine. So at the time, computational translation was still, I'm not going to say it was in its infancy because it wasn't, but using an algorithm to translate was new.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin explained how the system would take a language like Russian, for example, and it would just treat it as a series of symbols and break it like a code. So in code breaking, you either need the key that tells you how letters behave, or you have to figure out how the letters behave. So the software uses what's called an expectation maximization algorithm. So it would, for example, look at the script for my episode, and it might see the word cipher, and it might say, well, this word could mean run or cat or Kayla. And then it would say, what would this whole document look like if every time I saw CIPHER, that meant the word run? And it just plugs that in. And then it goes, okay, well, it's actually often followed by another word that I've figured out is an adjective. So it's probably not a verb. It's probably a noun. It basically does this thousands of times and then uses general grammar rules to be would this make sense? And as it starts to unlock the sort of behavior of some words, it can say okay, well, in English, adjectives precede nouns, adverbs precede verbs, and it starts to get a sense of which words are verbs and which words are nouns.
That's
And
so fun.
often, for example, in English, we use the letters TH together a lot. So it's oh, if these 2 symbols appear together, it could be TH or PH, right? So it just runs it thousands of times
Mhm.
until it starts to get something that makes sense. And thousands of versions of it will just come out as complete gibberish.
Mhm.
But it's like piecing a puzzle together. So Kevin Knight is giving this talk about how this algorithm works. And at the end, he casually says, it can also break ciphers. So if you have a long coded text to share, let me know. Christiane finds him immediately after this talk. And she's like, I have something for you. She gives him a cipher. He's like, the longer the text is, the better the algorithm performs.
Ooh.
This is perfect. Let's do it. But it does require a bit of footwork on the front end. So the first thing Kevin did was copy all 90 symbols and turn them into text for the computer that it can read.
Mhm.
So he went through and like there's a symbol that looks like a lip. So he made that lip, like LIP.
Oh, yeah.
There's a symbol that looks like an O with 2 hash marks inside. So he basically just made that the letter O. And then he typed the first 16 pages of the cipher into the software and said, like, here's 16 pages of the cipher. And he basically asks the algorithm, like, what do these symbols have in common with each other? How they appear? The software comes back and basically says, almost every time there's a lip, it's preceded by an O or whatever, something like that. In other words, we're starting to figure out the grammatical pattern of the text. He did a frequency analysis on the Roman letters that appeared in the cipher. And the the algorithm found that the way that they appear were in line with a Western language. So he was like, this is potentially a simple substitution cipher where letters are just swapped one to one, as opposed to being like rearranged in some way. But if that's the case, we need to figure out what language it is. So as I mentioned, there was Philip, which was a German spelling, and there was Latin. So they were like, this seems like a good place to start. They started with German. Kevin ran the software to basically try to guess what the original language was based on frequency analysis. He ran it 5 times, which every time he runs it, it takes 5 hours each time. So like over the course of days, he runs it through many times. It's like trying to encode in Premiere. Like, yeah. It's like your computer is like, like it starts getting really hot
for 10 years.
Like the fans going off. And finally the algorithm was like, there is a possibility it's German. Like it might be German. It's behaving like German. So looking for patterns in the cipher, he saw 2 symbols appeared together 99 times and were often followed by a third symbol. But Kevin didn't speak German, so he basically went online and researched common German letter combinations. And German frequently uses CH together at the end of words and CHT, like knocked, licked. So Kevin was like, let's just assume, like, let's just work on the assumption that these could be CH and CHT. He worked on this for weeks by hand and came to the same conclusion that Christiane came to. There are way too many symbols to correspond with an alphabet. So, like, what's happening here? He was like, what if multiple symbols are used for the same letter at different times just to fuck up the reader? In other words, what if there are several symbols that represent A and they just appears in different ways throughout the text? So he kept working by hand with that theory. And he started looking at small words and saying, okay, this 3-letter word could be the word like the
How
in
did
German.
they figure out what was words if there were no spaces?
They hadn't yet.
Oh, okay.
He was basically just saying like, let me see where I can kind of like parse out where I might have like der in German, which is the. And he was like, if I can find a few places where like I see the same letters recurring, I can maybe assume that those are a 3-letter word, like the, and then I can plug in, like, see if that makes sense, like where that appears.
Okay.
So he did, and he did find what he thought to be the word the, and he was like, okay, well, I'm just going to say in English instead of German, but like if this is THE, then I can assume that anytime this symbol appears, it's T, and this symbol appears, it's H, right? So like he started to crack enough small words
Mhm.
that he could start to pick out letters in other places.
It's like when you find the first number in Sudoku.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the most satisfying. On a hard level, not on the easy level.
Some of us are bad at math, so we would be happy just to get the first letter on an easy level. They finally cracked a phrase. The first big phrase they broke was, I'm going to try to say it in German, Zeremonie der Aufnahme, meaning initiation ceremony.
Oh,
Some of the bigger symbols he still couldn't crack, like the lip symbol. And he was like, maybe these like bigger symbols stand for whole words. What are the rules?
mm-hmm.
So he's trying to crack another phrase. And in this whole jumble of symbols, he is able to make out letters that spell Der Kandidat antwortet, meaning the candidate answers. But in between the words, there are symbols. They are unaccented Roman symbols. And he's like, what the fuck are these if there are words and then there's symbols in between the words? And he realizes the Roman symbols are the spaces between the words
Oh, sneaky.
when they are unaccented. And the accented symbols are what make up the words.
Oh, can I see it again?
Mm-hmm.
Looks right to me.
Checks out. This now starts to blow the whole thing wide open because he can figure out how many letters are in a word.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember when you were like, how does he know if it's wall-to-wall text? And I was like, he doesn't. Now he does.
Okay, great.
So he emails Christiane and her colleague, who is the head of the linguistics department at Uppsala. Her name is Beata. And he's like, I think I'm making progress. And then he sends them 2 lines in German. Not going to read it. Too many words. Can't do it. Stars. Not today. And Christiane writes back with a translation. It says, this stroke is the sign/symbol and the beginning of the confidentiality/familiarity that the brother, from now on companion, can expect of us.
One more time.
This stroke is the sign or symbol and the beginning of the confidentiality/familiarity that the brother, from now on companion, can expect of us.
Okay.
She's like, this German word, Gazella, it means companion. But she knows it because remember, her whole thing is weird old books. She's like, this word is often used in a special particular context. It is a rank in fraternal orders.
Oh.
She's like, this is a secret society. In other words, this phrase is basically saying this is the symbol that of confidentiality that the brother who is becoming like a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like he's in. The same way that like if we were decoding something and we saw the word like adept, we'd be like, this is some occult shit.
Yeah.
This is some, you know? Or if we saw like diamond opal duchess tier, we'd be like, this is an MLM. This is a secret code from an MLM. Now the 3 of them, Kevin, Christiane, and Beata, are emailing back and forth because they're like, we have something we can fucking work with. And Christiane and Beata are working on it by hand. Kevin's working on it by hand and feeding it back through the algorithm. They still don't know what the big symbols mean. And this feels like kind of key to breaking it.
Big, like in size.
Yeah.
Like the lips is like a big.
It's like a weird, it's not, the others are all like stand-ins for letters. They're like runes, Roman letters, regular, like Western letters. But then sometimes there's just like the lips and it's like, what is this?
Okay.
They're staring at this. Beata is in her office, just staring at it. She gets up, she walks into Christiane's office, she points to the page and she says, it's not a lip, it's an eye. Christiane is like, it all makes sense because this phrase that we decoded, the phrase light hand, she's like, it seemed familiar to me. I knew I remembered it from something I'd read. So I went back and I found this academic paper about this secret society that called themselves the Great Enlightened Society of Oculists. And the phrase light hand appeared in their public bylaws.
Oh my God.
She's like, I think we know what's happening here. So, what do we know about the Great Enlightened Society of Oculists? They were a group of ophthalmologists.
Really?
Publicly, we know that they were eye surgeons. In their public bylaws, they said, quote, well, I'm paraphrasing. We exceed all other healers because we can pierce cataracts. Only those with a light hand need apply. And their publicly stated goal was to keep out charlatans who might try to take advantage of unsuspecting folks, especially people who were blind, who needed eye surgery.
Yeah.
So almost like a guild, like we are the real ophthalmologists, we are the real surgeons, like we are publicly, they were like, we're establishing this society to protect people from like fake eye surgeons. And remember, this is the 1740s. So like eye surgery is
Highly advanced for the time.
Right. Being able to pierce cataracts is like fucking insane, actually. So the society were led by...
In my brain, it's like written in like, I forgot it was the 1700s. And I was like, in the 2000s?
So the society were led by Count Friedrich August von Veltheim, who we know very little about, except that he died in April of 1775. The seal of the Great Enlightened Society of Oculists features a cataract needle, pince nez, which are those little glasses that just like sit on your nose, and cats watching over a mouse.
Okay.
We know from that academic paper that women could be oculists, which was very progressive for the 1700s.
Yeah.
There were a lot of secret societies in the 1700s. It was very popular, but a lot of them didn't allow women. So this series of discoveries had broken the whole cipher open. They are able to decipher the following initiation ritual from the manuscript.
For eye doctors.
Basically, the candidate has to agree to an apprenticeship and pledge themselves to the society. Then they are brought into a dark room, and the brother conducting the initiation says, "Hereby I pass to the brother, the candidate, in body and soul, so that he sees if one cannot help his weak face with an operation." Then they bring the candidate to a table full of optical instruments, surrounded by candles, and there is a blank piece of paper in front of him, and they tell him to read it. And then they say in the manuscript, if after a while he answers that he cannot see anything written on there, then the master of ceremonies puts on him a pair of eyeglasses and asks him again if he is not able to read the writing. He answers no. During this time, the master of ceremonies comforts him as good as he can, raises his hopes for improvement, washes his eyes with a cloth, and if nothing helps, he will announce that they have to proceed with the operation.
What?
Then all of those present members reach for the candles, place themselves around the candidate and the master of ceremonies, plucks a hair from the eyebrow with a small pair of tweezers, under constant urging, comfort, and encouragement, and concludes herewith the operation. Thereupon calls the candidate to him and says to him, "He is perhaps in thought that somewhat serious matters are to be found at the society, but he should be assured of the opposite, and during the ceremony he should not think further about the shells, but the core, even at the end, these symbolic actions, out of which none are without meaning." After this, and this is a direct quote, the conducting brother adorns the guard with the apprentice decoration around the right arm and leads him again to a secondary table where instead of the secretarius's unwritten piece of paper, the entire teaching for the apprentices is placed. All present would congratulate the brother, and the guard explains to him insofar as the emblem above that it symbolizes the blindness and the subtleness. He instructs the apprentice based on the essay about what he has to know as an apprentice and teaches him about what is to be used against strangers and false brothers. So basically, the initiation ceremony, they set the guy down, they give him a blank piece of paper, and they're like, "Can you read the instructions?" And he's like, "No." And they're like, "We're going to have to do the operation." And then they bring him over, they pluck a hair out of his eyebrow, they give him a new piece of paper and say, "Try now." And he can read. And they're like, "We've cured your blindness." It's all a metaphor for the blindness of like being uninitiated, the knowledge in the enlightened society. And they give him like the manuscript that tells him all the rules of being an apprentice.
So are they just like silly, goofy guys?
We're going to find out. Once they got through the whole manuscript, they're like, there is nothing in here about actual eye surgery.
Mm-hmm.
It talks about having a light hand, but it's not medical at all. What is going on here? So they reached out to Andreas Onerforce, who is a historian of ideas, which is a job I didn't know existed, but now want. He is a university researcher who specializes in secret societies because secret societies were often a place of the spreading of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
This is a quote from Noah Schachman's article. When Maggie contacted him, Onerforce readily agreed to read this newly decoded document from a clandestine order. Quote, like the kid who sees candies, I could not resist, he says, tugging gently at his ascot. Plus, my boss wasn't there.
Everyone is just a silly, goofy guy.
So they all met at Andreas's house in Lund, Sweden. He's exactly what you'd imagine, including Kevin Knight, who flew in from California. And Andreas tells everyone secret societies were very popular in the 17 and 1800s. They were like salons, like they were a place where people would discuss ideas, a lot of politics, revolutionary ideas. They provided the security of keeping the state and the establishment out of there so that they could actually discuss like revolutionary ideas, because in the streets, if you were talking about like overthrowing a monarch, for example, like you would be beheaded. So this was a place where you could protect the like nascent ideas of revolutionaries, and the government and monarchies couldn't be privy to your discussions. And they were egalitarian. So they allowed both upper-class noblemen and lower-class merchants. And that was especially dangerous to the establishment because the government thrives on keeping the upper classes separated from the lower classes and keeping the lower classes fighting amongst each other. If this sounds familiar, welcome to hell. They try to sow division amongst the people because they know that if we all realize that actually we have the power, that they would immediately have their oligarchies toppled. So if you keep everyone fighting against each other, then they won't turn on the upper class. Anyway, this threatened the social hierarchy. And so these societies were quote unquote secret for this reason. And they also, for the most part, accepted members regardless of religion, which was also really threatening to the Catholic Church, which was the main like power in Europe at the time. The Copiale cipher has what Schachman describes as direct calls for revolution in it.
Ooh.
It talks about slaying the three-headed monster of the state. It was written in one of the German states in the 1730s, so this is decades before the American Revolution. It is 100 years before the wars we talked about in the Ludwig episode.
Mm-hmm.
Andreas said, quote, to someone at the time, this would be like reading a manifesto from a terrorist organization. That's like how intense the idea at the time of even saying like let's slay the three-headed monster of the state would have been to like a typical 1700s person. The existence of the group was common knowledge, but they were passing themselves off as an ophthalmologist guild the whole time.
Oh.
Which is why everyone left them alone.
Yeah.
No one was trying to infiltrate them, but they were secretly discussing very progressive political ideas.
Yeah.
Noah Schachman writes, quote, traditionally, historians have just ignored documents like this because we don't have the tools to make sense of them. That's why the oculists passed as early surgeons for so long. But there are scores of these enciphered documents. Some concern new rights of a fraternal order. Others could detail political movements. There's no way to tell for sure because they're cryptologically sealed. There's a whole secret history of the West waiting to be told. There are so many more codes.
Oh my God.
As they got deeper into the cipher, they made a startling discovery. The back 78 pages of the 105-page manuscript is exclusively what at the time were the completely secret and sealed rituals of another fraternal organization.
No.
The Freemasons.
No. Oh my God. I thought it was silly, goofy guys.
Turns out the Freemasons are silly, goofy guys.
That's so silly, goofy.
And true story, originally I was going to do, and may still someday do, a multi-part episode about the Freemasons.
That's on my list too. We're going to have to fight over it.
The problem I discovered is that, because I read The Craft, which is a great book. Let me find the author. John Dickey. The problem is I read The Craft by John Dickey, which is great. And if you're interested in Freemasonry, you should read it. But what I learned about the Freemasons, I mean, I'll get into it actually. We'll talk about it. So they're deciphering this manuscript. They're like, did this secret society infiltrate the Freemasons and like write down their secret rituals? Like, were they spies? And then they were like, no. So in 1738, Pope Clement had come out publicly against Freemasonry and had barred all Catholics from joining. At the time, there was a lot of anti-Freemason sentiment because, like I said, it was dangerous to the systems in power. It's no surprise that a few years later, a lot of American revolutionaries, George Washington, Ben Franklin, would all come out as Freemasons. So
The Gates family, famously.
So what happened here? The Gates family. Their theory is that when all this anti-Freemason shit went down, a group of Freemasons decided to go even further underground. So their theory is they took Freemasonry and buried it in a new secret society where they knew no one would come looking for it. They got a new name, a new crest, a few new rituals, like the initiation ritual.
Yeah.
But they knew they could hide it where no one would ever look. So remember I told you that secret societies were common and they weren't secret societies. They weren't all persecuted the way Freemasons were because they didn't all have this freedom of religion and freedom of class mixing. So they were like, we're going to take our Freemason rituals, layer new rituals on top of it. And if you know anything about Freemasonry, you know that all the rituals are metaphors. So the Freemasons, their real core principle is about self-development. And it's a lot of like enlightenment principles about going from darkness into the light and knowledge and like education as sort of like the ticket to self-betterment. And a lot of their rituals involve, like I said, going from darkness to light, which is about literal enlightenment, like in terms of knowledge. And in the Freemason initiation ritual, everyone acts out a little play. And it's about the building of Solomon's temple, which is also a metaphor. And the Mason tools are representative of the tools that you use to build your moral character. And in Freemasonry, like in the initiation ritual, you're told that like if you ever break the secret code, like if you ever spill the secrets, like you will be put to death in this way. But all of it is a metaphor. Mm-hmm. So in the same way, the Oculus ceremony is all a metaphor, but they've just swapped out ophthalmology for the Mason metaphor. So instead of light, they use sight.
Oh, that's so cool. So were they all ophthalmologists or were they pretending?
It seems like it's hard to say, actually, because we don't know who they were.
Damn it.
We only know who the count was. So what they think happened is this lodge, because the Freemasons are organized in lodges. So they think what happened is that this lodge was like, we have to lay low for a while. And so they recorded all their rituals and rites buried in this code under the layer of another secret society to keep it alive. The author of the Wired article learned that before Count von Veltheim died, he took all his Oculus paraphernalia and locked it in a trunk. And he gave the trunk to his son and said, hide this away until the Duke instructs otherwise.
Okay.
The Duke never instructed otherwise, and the trunk was just lost to history until 1918 when it was found, opened, and they were like, I don't know what the fuck this is. So they just took it to the state archives because it was old, and they were like, it's history, you can have it.
We found history.
Yeah. We don't know what it means. It's been in the state archives in Wolfenbüttel for 100 years, and it's still there. So Noah Schachtman went there with Andreas. Oh, no, sorry. Andreas wasn't able to meet him. He sent his boss in his place. And they decided to examine the contents of the trunk together.
Oh, man.
So in the trunk, they found the seal that I described, a bone-handled cataract needle,
oh,
an apron, which they wore for rituals and not coincidentally is also what the Freemasons wear. There were several amulets that were made to look like anatomically correct eyes.
Oh.
And curiously, what Schachtman describes as 9 copies of a 4-page document written in a mixture of Old German, Latin, and the Copiale's coded script. They're called dialgebra, meaning the old way of calculating.
Mm-hmm.
And they are just rows of cipher letters. The document, though, adds the symbols up like numbers. It would appear, Schachtman says, that the Copiale symbols don't represent just words and letters. They stand for numbers too.
No.
And we have no idea what it means.
No.
There is a whole additional layer of meaning to these documents that we have no clue about.
So the Copiale Cipher 3 has a whole other meaning.
Probably.
Oh my God.
Because they found pamphlets that are like, here's how to do the algebra of the ciphers.
And no
Meaning
one's
when you
done
have
it?
a cipher, it's not actually instructive. It's just like, it's like if you were looking at like a math problem, it's that, but there's just like random symbols, old German.
Oh my God.
It's like a whole nother code.
Oh my God. That is not the twist I wanted.
But it's the twist we needed.
It's the twist we needed. Oh my God.
You'll be happy to know that as of 2015, the Great Enlightened Society of Oculists still exists.
Yes.
And it may still even exist today, but they have not updated their website since 2015.
Did you go to it?
I did.
What's the font color?
On their website, it's basically Web 2.0. Like
Okay,
it's like a blog spot.
Yes.
On their website, they included this short history from their perspective.
Okay.
I believe this is translated, so it's like a little bit, like the English is a little bit off, but the Great Enlightened Society of Oculists is a Freemason society founded 1742 in Wolfenbüttel, Germany by Count Friedrich August von Veltheim. After his accident, 1763, and then in parentheses, he died 1775, and the emigration of two high-ranking oculists to America, the lodge didn't exist anymore in Germany. In 1765, the society has been established again by the two emigrants and exists since that year continuously, meaning that the Great Enlightened Society of Oculists didn't go anywhere, they just came to America.
Oh.
After World War II, a German lodge has been established again in Frankfurt, 1946. While the first oculists had been all ophthalmologists, today the society is open for everybody. The goal of the Great Enlightened Society of Oculists is a global, peaceful coexistence of all nations, races, and religions on Earth. By end of 2015, 3,591 Freemasons were organized in the American Lodge and 273 in the German.
Oh.
The last post on their website is from April of 2015, and it reads, title, Our Life, Our World. We have only one world. We need to protect it for us, for our children, and for our children's children. Our vision is that all people will live together in peace and respect. What is your vision of a future world?
Oh, no.
So they're still out there,
They're still-
just doing their thing.
Should we join?
I don't know if we can join. I don't know if they still let women. I think now. So one of the things I learned about Freemasonry is they don't let women join, but the Oculists did. So I don't know. Maybe they do. I think some Freemason lodges have allowed women to join recently. Like there is one Grand Master woman, like of a lodge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess the Oculists still let women join, so we could potentially join.
We could. Should we become ophthalmologists just to like give ourselves an edge?
My pitch was going to be that we should start our own secret
That was my
society.
second pitch that I thought of. And then immediately after I was like, or we could go to medical school. We love an excuse to go back to school.
We do love an excuse to go back to school. I don't really feel like going to medical school because famously,
It's hard.
no, just famously, my perspective on that is gross.
Mm-hmm.
Like gross.
Yeah.
So I'm not probably not like cut out for medical school.
Cut out because they're surgeons.
Gross. But
Gross.
down to start a secret society.
Okay. I'm fine with that. It feels like we're kind of in alignment with them,
It feels like.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Done.
Great. Go to mysteryteaminc.com/secret society.
Join.
Join. Just kidding. Or am I?
We'll just have like a landing page.
Is having a secret society just having a blog spot? Because we can do
Kind of.
that.
Yeah.
Well, you can try to put that into your browser and see what happens.
And see if maybe one night one of us has one soju and creates that landing page. I can't wait to make that
Anyway.
landing page.
So that is all based on an article called "They Cracked This 250-Year-Old Code and Found a Secret Society Inside"
Oh, great.
by Noah Schachtman, which you can see why, if I said it earlier, it
Yeah.
might have spoiled the surprise.
It would have spoiled the surprise. Although it did not spoil the surprise of the code within the code,
It did not.
which is going to haunt me
Me too.
for the next 48 to 72 hours.
Correct. Until you promptly forget about it.
Until I forget about it.
Not
out of not caring, just out of having a malfunctioning brain.
Yeah. The listeners of this episode will get to enjoy a title of this episode, which will probably be something about the Copiale Cipher or a secret society. So
Okay, great. I love that for them. I love that for them. The people who go back and listen multiple times
yeah.
just get to hold on to the knowledge.
That's so nice.
For me, it like leaks out.
Yeah. You don't listen to our old episodes? We do periodically. 'Cause
Sometimes,
we
yeah, for the
do our
but it's all new to me.
retrospectives. I know. Yes, that is very fun for them.
It is. I'm gonna call them silly goofy guys. That is super fun.
Silly goofy guys. They are. Well, the Masons are silly goofy guys. Like
Yeah.
they like to just like put on aprons and like act out a skit.
Which we do.
I know. Really makes you think.
I love that. I love a cipher.
Yeah, me too.
I'm glad I didn't do the cipher that I was going to do because this
Oh.
is way better.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I abandoned that cipher.
Okay, great. I have a feeling that if you abandon it, it's probably for a good reason.
It was for a very good
It's like we
reason.
talked about how when we write our episodes, like our process, and like so often if I didn't take a note on it or like highlight it, like, and I don't remember it, it doesn't belong in here.
Mhm.
Like, they can't be that good.
Yeah. Mine is if I am feeling frustrated doing the research, I just scrap it.
Yeah,
Because it should be fun.
that's totally real.
Yeah.
I feel that
Jurassic
way,
Park
too.
was very fun.
Yeah. I had a few topics that happened to me this
Me
season.
too. I think I had 3.
And I like really thought I read like I read the whole book.
Yes, me too. Like a 400-page
Freemasons
book.
was one of them because Freemasons is like interesting, but again, well, the history of them is like, I don't know. I just kind of was like, I'm frustrated with this. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to like revisit it at some point. But there were others that I did this season that I was working on where I was like, this is not fun.
I did Knights Templar. I read 2 books.
Yeah.
And then I was like, it's actually not that
I
interesting.
tried to get into Knights Templar back like somewhere between 50 and 100, and I got sick of it. Like I was like,
It's
I
like
don't think
not-
there's that much here.
There was nothing there.
yeah.
And I was devastated because
Yeah.
I was like, Maggie's gonna fucking love
I
this.
would have loved that.
If it was interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing this wonderful story. That was
I'm
such a delight.
Glad you enjoyed it. I'm really glad I got to expand on the story because I covered it on TikTok. And that TikTok is good for, I mean, at the time you could only do 1 minute long TikTok. So like
Yeah.
it's good for what you could do in
Remember
a
when
minute.
people used to get mad at us?
Yeah.
When some people had 3 minutes and we hadn't gotten it yet.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, just do a 3 minute.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People are really mean to us.
I know. But also, and I stand by this because like I get how annoying it is. I'm on TikTok more than anyone should legally be allowed to be. If you are not interested enough to go to a part 2, don't.
Then it's not for you.
It's not for you. And if you want a part 2, but you can't be bothered to click over to the profile,
Then it's not for you.
then it's not for you. Or then that's a you problem.
Yeah, that sounds like a you problem.
And if it's like lost in the you know, like if it's from like weeks ago and it's just like lost in the profile and you
It's
don't want to
not for
look for
you.
it, then if it didn't find you, it wasn't meant for you. You know what I mean? Like when you love something, you let it go. Like if it's not what's not meant for you won't miss you.
What's not meant for you will not be on
Or
your for you.
What's meant for you won't miss you. Like,
There we go.
or go look for it.
Or find it.
I read a 500-page book just to find out I didn't want to do a podcast about that guy. Like, surely you can look for it. Also, because we used to put the title in big letters
Yeah.
on the thumbnail.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, You know what really grinds my gears? Just like my rant about TikTok today.
Oh, God. I have a lot of feelings about TikTok.
Sorry, we're so angry. Sorry, we're women who are so angry. Just kidding. Everyone who listens to this podcast is probably an angry girl, gay or they. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Love you.
Thank you. Love you. We don't know.
Stay in your lane.
Buckle the buck up.
Encrypted smooches.
That's going to be a good one for 150.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. What's the math version of it?